The HFI transmission. Commander Ilara Voss stared through the cracked observation dome of Lyra Prime's central command hub, her four-fingered hand pressed against the transparent alloy, as she watched another orbital defense platform disintegrate under sustained fire from the Void Dominion's dreadnoughts. The once pristine rings of her homeworld now resembled a debris field more than the technological marvel they had been just 3 cycles ago when the invasion began. "Status report," she demanded, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. The silver markings along her blue skin had dulled, a physiological response to extreme stress among her species, but she refused to let her command staff see any other sign of weakness. Strategic Officer Krell, a lanky Meridian with iridescent scales covering his humanoid frame, looked up from his console with eyes that had long since lost their spark. "Not good, Commander. Defense grid at 12% capacity. Civilian evacuation ships are down to 36%. The Void Dominion has deployed phase disruptors in sectors 4 through 9. He paused, mandibles clicking together nervously. "The Galactic Alliance Council still hasn't responded to our distress signals." Ilara's jaw tightened. The Galactic Alliance, a confederation of 27 advanced civilizations that had promised mutual defense and prosperity, had abandoned them when the true threat arrived. One by one, as the massive black ships of the Void Dominion began systematically destroying outer colonies, their supposed allies had gone silent. "Of course they haven't," she muttered. "The Nexians are deeply concerned about the situation, but unable to spare resources. The Ventrillus Conclave is reassessing their strategic position, and the Tachyon Assembly is still deliberating on the appropriate response protocol." Her bitter recitation of diplomatic excuses was interrupted by another impact that shook the command center violently enough to send several officers sprawling to the floor. Warning klaxons blared as red emergency lighting bathed the room. "Hull breach on levels 40 through 43, shouted her chief engineer, Soval, his tentacles working frantically across multiple screens. "Atmospheric containment holding, but structural integrity is down to critical levels. One more hit like that and—" "I know what happens next," Ilara cut him off. She'd seen it happen to 17 other worlds in the Alliance territory. The Void Dominion didn't just conquer. They consumed. Their world eaters would descend through the atmosphere, burrowing deep into the planet's crust before deploying their conversion engines. Within hours, the entire biosphere would be transformed into fuel and raw materials for their endless campaign of expansion. Communications Officer Tala, a diminutive Lumeri whose bioluminescent patterns flickered anxiously across her translucent skin, raised her voice over the chaos. "Commander, should I prepare the final transmission protocol?" The room went silent. The final transmission, a last desperate cry into the void of space, sent on all frequencies with encryption dropped. It was reserved for extinction-level events, when all hope of victory or rescue had faded. It was also a beacon that would draw the Void Dominion straight to their command center. Ilara closed her eyes briefly. They had followed every protocol, fought with every weapon, called upon every ally. Nothing had worked. The Void Dominion's ships seemed impervious to their most advanced weaponry, and their energy shields adapted almost instantly to any frequency they used against them. "Do it," she finally said, "but add one more recipient code to the standard distribution." Tala's patterns shifted to a confused blue. "Commander, add the Earth coordinates." Strategic Officer Krell looked up sharply. "The humans." "Commander, with all due respect, they've isolated themselves from galactic affairs for nearly 50 cycles. They don't respond to Alliance communications. They don't participate in trade summits. For all we know, they've destroyed themselves in another one of their wars. Or they've been preparing," Ilara countered. "Remember your history, Officer Krell." Before they went silent, the humans fought a border skirmish with the Cronus hegemony. 3 outdated Earth vessels against 12 advanced hegemony cruisers. She turned to face her command staff fully. The humans destroyed 9 ships before the remaining 3 retreated. The hegemony never attempted to expand in their direction again. That was half a century ago, Soval objected. And even if they receive our message, why would they help us when the entire alliance has turned its back? A bitter smile crossed Ilara's face. Because humans are strange that way. Throughout their brief time in galactic society, they were consistently unpredictable. Where other species sought advantage, humans sometimes chose principle. Where logical calculation suggested retreat, humans often charged forward. She shook her head. I don't pretend to understand them, but we have nothing left to lose. Tala nodded and added the coordinates to the transmission queue. Her fingers danced across the control surface as she prepared the message that would broadcast their final moments to anyone who might be listening. Message ready, Commander, she announced softly. Ilara took a deep breath. This is Commander Ilara Voss of Lyra Prime, last defensive position of the Galactic Alliance's 4th quadrant. Our civilization faces extinction at the hands of the Void Dominion. Our defenses have failed. Our allies have abandoned us. If anyone receives this message, know that we fought until the end. May our fate serve as warning. The void consumes all. She paused, then added, to the humans of Earth, if you still exist, if you still remember the stars. The enemy that now destroys us once spoke of your world with fear. Perhaps they were right to do so. She nodded to Tala. Send it. The message shot outward from their planet's failing communication array, racing ahead of the destruction that seemed inevitable. On the tactical display, the massive Void Dominion flagship, a behemoth of twisted black metal nearly 20 kilometers long, began moving into low orbit, its world eaters deploying from enormous hangars along its underbelly. Now we fight to the last, Ilara said, drawing her ceremonial blade. A symbolic gesture, but one that strengthened the resolve of her officers. Divert all remaining power to the ground defenses. If we cannot save our world, we will make its taking so costly that the Void Dominion will remember us with pain. For 3 more hours, they fought with everything they had left. The command center shook constantly as Void Dominion ground forces breached the defensive perimeter and began infiltrating the lower levels of the complex. Barricades were hastily erected, weapons distributed, last messages sent to loved ones who had likely already perished. Ilara had just finished positioning her final defense group when Strategic Officer Krell called out in a voice strained with disbelief. Commander, multiple objects entering the system at. That can't be right. What is it? She demanded, rushing back to the tactical display. Ships. Hundreds of them. But they're moving at impossible speeds. His scaled hands trembled as he adjusted the sensors. The mass readings don't make sense either. Some of them are massive, but they're accelerating like interceptors. Communications Officer Tala's bioluminescence flared brightly. Commander, I'm receiving a transmission from the lead vessel on an open channel. Put it through, Ilara ordered, not daring to hope. The main view screen flickered, and for a moment, Ilara thought the system had malfunctioned. The bridge she was looking at didn't resemble any ship design she recognized. It was utilitarian, almost crude by Alliance standards, with exposed conduits and structural bracing visible along bulkheads. Weapon stations didn't have the clean holographic interfaces of Alliance vessels, but instead featured physical controls and manual override systems. And at the center stood a human. Unmistakably human, with dark skin and close-cropped silver hair. She wore a black uniform adorned with insignia Ilara didn't recognize, but the confident stance and unwavering gaze needed no translation. This is Admiral Helena Reyes of the Earth Defense Force Phantom Fleet. We received your distress call, Commander Voss. The human's voice was calm, almost conversational, as if arriving unannounced in a system under siege was a routine occurrence. Sorry about the delay. Had to gather the full battle group. Looks like we arrived just in time for the main event. Ilara found herself speechless, a condition quickly remedied by an enormous explosion that shook the command center. Through the observation dome, they watched as one of the Void Dominion's dreadnoughts suddenly erupted in a series of detonations along its central spine. Admiral Rice smiled, a predatory expression that seemed to transform her entire demeanor. "I see my advance team has started the introductions. If you don't mind, Commander, we'd like to handle this from here. I suggest you focus on evacuating your remaining civilians and military personnel. Things are about to get rather chaotic." As if to emphasize her point, more explosions blossomed across the Void Dominion fleet. Ships that had seemed invincible just moments before were now breaking apart or listing aimlessly, their systems apparently disabled by an unseen force. "How are you doing this?" Ilara couldn't help asking. "We've thrown everything we have at their shields. Let's just say humanity has spent the last 50 years preparing for exactly this scenario." Admiral Rice glanced at something off-screen, nodded, then returned her attention to Ilara. The Void Dominion visited Earth once, long before they revealed themselves to the rest of the galaxy. We weren't ready then. We are now. Through the viewport, Ilara watched in awe as hundreds of ships suddenly materialized in formation around the planet, ships that had somehow approached undetected by both Lyran and Void Dominion sensors. Some were enormous, dwarfing even the Void flagship, while others were small and agile, darting between the larger vessels with astonishing speed and precision. Their designs defied conventional aesthetics, with jutting angles and asymmetrical configurations that would have horrified Alliance engineers. But as they engaged the Void Dominion forces with weapons unlike anything Ilara had ever witnessed, weapons that somehow bypassed shields entirely or caused enemy vessels to implode without apparent external damage, she understood that function had thoroughly superseded form. "Why?" Ilara asked, still struggling to process the sudden reversal of their fortunes. "Why help us when the entire Alliance abandoned Lyra Prime?" Admiral Rice's expression softened slightly. "Because that's what humans do, Commander. We remember our friends, we pay our debts, and we absolutely despise bullies." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "Besides, we've been looking for an excuse to test our new toys against the Void Dominion in a full-scale engagement. You've provided us with the perfect opportunity." As Ilara watched the battle unfold, if such a one-sided engagement could truly be called a battle, she felt something she had thought lost forever: hope. The humans hadn't just sent ships, they had sent a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. And they fought with a ferocity and cunning that made even the Void Dominion's relentless forces seem hesitant and disorganized. "Prepare for boarding parties, Commander," Admiral Rice said, breaking into Ilara's thoughts. "We're sending teams to help evacuate your wounded and secure critical areas. Don't be alarmed by their appearance. Our combat suits are designed for function, not diplomacy." As if on cue, brilliant flashes of light erupted throughout the command center as humanoid figures materialized directly through what should have been impenetrable shields and walls. The humans, at least Ilara assumed they were humans, were encased in bulky armor that concealed all features and made them appear more robotic than organic. Each carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. One of them stepped forward, helmet retracting to reveal a man with sharp features and eyes that seemed to calculate a dozen scenarios at once. "Commander Voss, Captain Daniel Kovac, Earth Defense Force. We're here to get you and your people to safety." He gestured to his team, who immediately began moving through the command center, setting up equipment and tending to the wounded with surprising gentleness given their intimidating appearance. "Captain," Ilara managed, still trying to process the sudden shift from certain doom to potential salvation. "I don't understand. How did your forces penetrate the Void Dominion's defenses so easily? We've been fighting them for cycles without making a dent." Captain Kovac's expression darkened. "Not easily, Commander. We've spent 50 years and lost too many good people learning their weaknesses." He checked something on his wrist display. "But now isn't the time for history lessons. Admiral Rice has authorized me to offer you and your government asylum on Earth until we can secure your world." Another explosion rocked the complex, but this time, Ilara realized it was from her own side. The remaining Lyran defense platforms were firing again. somehow coordinating perfectly with the human vessels to target vulnerable points on the void ships. "Our systems are back online," Strategic Officer Krell reported with bewilderment. "But I'm not controlling them." "That would be our combat AI integrating with your defense grid," Captain Kovac explained casually. "Hope you don't mind. It's standard procedure. Don't worry, we'll give you back control once the situation is stabilized." Ilara watched as the massive Void Dominion flagship, which had seemed unstoppable just minutes earlier, now found itself surrounded by human vessels that seemed to appear and disappear at will, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before counterattacks could find their mark. "The Phantom Fleet," she murmured, remembering old rumors and dismissed intelligence reports about Earth's secret armada. "They're real." Captain Kovac smiled grimly. "Very real, Commander. And the Void Dominion is about to learn exactly why the rest of the galaxy should be grateful we decided to help rather than conquer." Hey Cantonments of Earth. Admiral Helena Reyes stood on the bridge of the EDF Nemesis, the flagship of Earth's Phantom Fleet, watching the battle unfold with the calculated patience of a predator. Around her, human operators worked with quiet efficiency, their movements economical and practiced. There was none of the shouting or dramatic declarations that filled historical accounts of ancient naval battles, just the steady pulse of a well-oiled war machine executing a plan 50 years in the making. "Phase 1 complete, Admiral," reported her tactical officer, Commander Sarah Chen. "The Void Dominion's command and control network has been isolated. Their ships can no longer coordinate effectively." Reyes nodded, her eyes fixed on the holographic battle display hovering at the center of the bridge. Red icons representing enemy vessels blinked out one by one as Earth's forces systematically dismantled the invasion fleet. "Status of the planetary defense?" she asked. "Captain Kovac's team has secured the command center and is coordinating with local forces," Chen replied. "Evacuation of critical personnel is underway. The Void ground forces are in disarray without orbital support." Reyes allowed herself a small smile. The Void Dominion had never faced an enemy who understood their technology and tactics. They relied on fear and overwhelming force, not innovation or adaptability. It made them predictable. "Admiral," her communications officer interrupted, "the Void flagship is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're requesting to speak with whoever commands our forces." "Well, that's a first," Reyes mused. In every previous encounter, the Void Dominion had fought to the bitter end, put them through, but maintain weapons lock. This could be a distraction. The main view screen shifted to reveal a figure that barely resembled any known sentient species. The Void Dominion's commander, if that's what it was, appeared as a shifting mass of darkness roughly shaped into a humanoid form, with points of purple light where eyes might be on a more conventional being. "You are not Alliance," the figure stated, its voice a discordant melody that seemed to come from multiple sources at once. "You are human." The word was spoken with a mixture of surprise and something that might have been fear. "Admiral Helena Reyes, Earth Defense Force," she replied evenly. "And you're trespassing in protected space." The dark figure seemed to pulse with agitation. "Protected? By whom?" "The Alliance abandoned this system. It is ours by right of conquest." "By Earth," Reyes answered simply. "And we have a very different definition of rights than you do." The Void Commander's form rippled. "Earth was deemed inconsequential. Primitive. Your species was scheduled for harvest in the next cycle." Several bridge officers exchanged glances, but Reyes remained impassive. "I'm afraid you'll need to revise your schedule. As you can see, we're no longer primitive, and we're definitely not inconsequential." "How?" the figure demanded. "How did you advance so quickly?" "Our assessment was flawed," Reyes cut in. "Here's what you missed in your assessment. When you sent your scout ships to Earth 50 years ago, when you destroyed our outposts on Mars and Europa thinking we wouldn't notice, you taught us something valuable." She leaned forward slightly. "You taught us what we were up against. She gestured to the battle raging outside. Everything you see here, every ship, every weapon, every tactic, was developed specifically to counter your technology. While you were busy conquering worlds that couldn't fight back, we were studying you, learning your weaknesses, and preparing. The Void Commander's form contracted slightly. Impossible. Our technology is superior to all others. Superior isn't the same as invincible, Rice countered. For instance, your phase shields are impressive, but they operate on a fluctuating frequency pattern that can be predicted and exploited if you have enough computational power. Your matter-convergent engines leave a distinctive quantum signature that can be tracked across vast distances. And your biological components, yes, we know about those, are vulnerable to specifically calibrated radiation pulses. With each revelation, the dark figure seemed to shrink back, the purple lights of its eyes dimming. You have one chance, Rice continued. Withdraw your forces from this system immediately. Cease all hostilities against the people of Lyra Prime and any other worlds you've targeted. Return to your territory and stay there. Or what? The figure challenged, though its voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. Rice smiled coldly. Or we'll show you exactly what humanity is capable of when truly provoked. What you've seen to date is just our opening move. The communication cut off abruptly. They're powering up their main drives, reported Commander Chen. The flagship is attempting to break orbit. Let them go, Rice ordered. But deploy tracker drones. I want to know where they retreat to. Admiral, her science officer interjected. Sensors indicate they're charging their conversion engine. They may be planning to destabilize the planet's core before withdrawing. Reyes's expression hardened. Not on my watch. Execute Protocol Omega. Throughout the bridge, officers immediately began implementing a series of commands that had been prepared long in advance. Outside, several of the larger human vessels moved into position around the Void flagship, their hulls opening to reveal devices that glowed with an eerie blue light. Dimensional anchors active, reported Commander Chen. Target locked. Fire. The devices released pulses of energy that didn't seem to travel so much as simply exist simultaneously at both their point of origin and their destination. Where they converged on the Void flagship, space itself seemed to fold and twist. The massive black vessel shuddered, its structure warping as if seen through a heat mirage. What are those? Asked Commander Ilara Voss, who had been brought aboard the Nemesis during the evacuation and now stood at the rear of the bridge, watching in amazement. Captain Kovic, who had escorted her, answered quietly. We call them reality locks. They'd prevent the Void ships from accessing the dimensional shortcuts they use to power their engines and weapons. On the main view screen, the Void flagship's attempt to flee was abruptly halted as its engines flared and died. The conversion engine, designed to tear apart the molecular structure of entire planets, sputtered and collapsed in on itself, creating a localized implosion that tore through the vessel's central section. All Void Dominion vessels are either destroyed or disabled. Admiral, reported Commander Chen. Their ground forces are surrendering to Liran and EDF troops. Rice nodded, satisfaction evident in her eyes. Begin recovery operations. I want every piece of their technology cataloged and secured. And check for survivors. Their biology is unlike anything we've encountered before. She turned to face Commander Voss, who was still staring at the view screen in shock. I believe you have questions, Commander. Ilara managed to compose herself. More than I can count, Admiral. But I'll start with the most pressing. Why did you help us? The truth, please, not the simplified version you gave earlier. Rice gestured for Ilara to follow her to a small conference room adjacent to the bridge. Once the door closed behind them, she seemed to relax slightly, the persona of the untouchable fleet commander giving way to something more human. 50 years ago, she began, the Void Dominion sent advanced scouts to our solar system. At the time, we had just begun establishing colonies on Mars and the Jovian moons. We were still decades away from developing FTL travel. They destroyed our outposts, killed our people, and left without a trace. She activated a holographic display showing historical footage of devastated Earth colonies, the destruction bearing the unmistakable signature of void technology. We recovered fragments of their technology, enough to understand what we were facing. When we realized the scope of the threat, a species that consumed entire worlds, we made a decision. Earth would prepare in secret. We would appear to withdraw from galactic affairs, giving the impression that we had turned isolationist or perhaps even destroyed ourselves. But in reality, Ilara concluded, you were building all of this. Reyes nodded. Every resource, every scientific breakthrough, every technological advance, all directed toward one goal, stopping the Void Dominion. We've been tracking their movements for decades, gathering intelligence, studying their tactics. And you never warned the Alliance. Ilara couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. We tried, Reyes said with a hint of bitterness. 20 years ago, we sent a delegation to the Alliance Council with evidence of the Void Dominion's activities and intentions. They dismissed our concerns as paranoia from a species known for its violent tendencies. She shook her head. The Alliance was too comfortable, too confident in its technological superiority. They couldn't imagine a threat they couldn't handle. Ilara couldn't argue with that assessment. The Alliance had grown complacent over centuries of relative peace. So when you received our distress call, we were already mobilizing, Reyes confirmed. We've been following the Void Dominion's campaign across Alliance space, gathering data, occasionally intervening covertly when we could. But we needed to choose our moment carefully. If we revealed our full capabilities too soon, the Void might have adapted before we could strike decisively. And now? Ilara asked. Now we push back, Reyes said simply. We've delivered a message the Void Dominion won't forget. Earth is not to be underestimated. And we protect our own. Our own? Ilara questioned. We're not part of Earth's domain. Reyes smiled, a genuine expression that softened her features. Humans have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But we prefer to think of it another way. Anyone willing to stand against the darkness is family, regardless of biology or origin. Before Ilara could respond, the ship's AI announced that representatives from the Lyran government had arrived and were requesting an audience with both commanders. As they walked back toward the bridge, Ilara found herself studying the human admiral with new eyes. You know, she said thoughtfully, the Alliance has misunderstood your species entirely. How so? Reyes asked. They believe humans were dangerous because of your capacity for violence, Ilara explained. But that's not it at all. You're dangerous because of your capacity for commitment. When humans decide something matters, there seems to be no length to which you won't go, no sacrifice you won't make, to see it through. Reyes laughed softly. That's probably the most accurate assessment of humanity I've ever heard from a non-human. Though I'd add one thing, we're equally committed to protecting what we care about. As they entered the bridge, the view screen showed Lyra Prime below them. The planet still bore the scars of invasion, but already, human ships were assisting with recovery efforts, their crews working alongside Lyrans to restore damaged infrastructure and treat the wounded. A delegation of Lyran officials stood hesitantly at the center of the bridge, clearly overwhelmed by the technology and military might surrounding them. When they saw Ilara, relief washed over their faces. The Lyran Provisional Council extends its deepest gratitude to Admiral Reyes and the Earth Defense Force, announced the lead counselor, her voice trembling slightly. We do not have words to express what your intervention means to our people. No thanks are necessary, Reyes replied with diplomatic grace. We stand together against a common enemy. Nevertheless, the counselor continued, we wish to formally request an alliance with Earth. The Galactic Alliance has failed us, but you have shown true courage and strength. We would be honored to count humanity among our closest allies. Reyes exchanged a glance with Ilara, then turned back to the Lyran delegation. Earth would be pleased to enter into such an alliance. In fact, I am authorized to extend this offer beyond Lyra Prime to any world that wishes to join us in standing against the Void Dominion. The implications of that statement hung in the air. Earth wasn't just offering protection. It was proposing a new interstellar coalition, one built on mutual defense rather than economic convenience. There will be those in the alliance who fear this development, Ilara warned quietly. They'll see it as Earth making a power grab. Let them, Rise replied, her voice equally low. Fear is a powerful motivator. Perhaps it will finally push them to take the threat seriously. As the diplomatic discussions continued, Ilara found herself drawn to the view screen and the stars beyond. For the first time since the Void Dominion had appeared on the edge of their system, she allowed herself to think about the future, not just survival, but true security and prosperity. The humans had changed everything. They had arrived not as conquerors, but as guardians, bringing with them technologies and tactics that the Alliance had never imagined. More importantly, they had brought hope to a galaxy that had begun to surrender to despair. Later, as the Lyran delegation prepared to return to the surface, Ilara approached Admiral Reyes one last time. The Void Dominion will return, she said. They don't abandon their targets easily. Reyes nodded, her expression serious but not concerned. We're counting on it. Today was just the first engagement in what will likely be a long campaign. But we've spent 50 years preparing for this fight, Commander Voss. And unlike the Alliance, Earth doesn't abandon its allies. She extended her hand in the human gesture of partnership. Welcome to a new era in galactic history, Commander. One where humanity takes its place among the stars not as conquerors or merchants, but as protectors. Ilara took the offered hand, feeling the strength and purpose in the human's grip. I believe you've already earned a different title, Admiral. The people below are calling your fleet the Phantoms of Earth, appearing when needed most, striking from the shadows, defending those who cannot defend themselves. Reyes smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. Phantoms of Earth. I like that. It suits us. She looked out at the stars, where her fleet maintained its vigilant watch. And I have a feeling the Void Dominion will learn to fear that name before we're done. Together, they watched as shuttles carried supplies and medical teams to the planet below. While in orbit, the damaged Lyran defense platforms were already being repaired and upgraded by human engineers. It was a scene repeated across the system as Earth's unexpected intervention transformed what had been a last stand into the first chapter of a new alliance. The galaxy was changing. The shadows were receding, and humanity, long dismissed as a minor player on the cosmic stage, had revealed itself to be the guardian force that would stand against the darkness.